Hi, I'm Julia. I write the blog Lemon Stripes, and I'm here because my husband Anel is on the panel, and three of my good pals are on the panel, and I'm so excited to moderate because I feel like since I turned 39, almost 40, I'm starting to see weird changes in my body that I don't understand. So selfishly, I just want to know the answers to these questions. Anyway, we have a great panel for you. We're going to ask questions for a while that we already have written out based on the information that these experts know, and then we'll open it up for a Q&A at the end. So first, we'll let everyone introduce themselves and also talk about what's one thing you wish women knew about perimenopause, and what personal experience, if any, do you have with this topic, just to get the ball rolling.
I feel like I shouldn't start here. I don't even want to be here. I just walked in and they're like, so much women here. I'm Anel Dzafic. I am a personal trainer and owner of Countdown Fitness, which is one here in town as of March of this year, and then we've been in Greenwich for, I don't even know, 10 years or so. So when we first started by doing this, I was like, okay, this is who I see. You guys are all of my clients, 35 to about 60 or so. So I've seen the body go through all this, and I definitely we're going to get more into detail with this, but I'm excited to share what I've seen in the last 15 years or so training you guys, and in terms of the physical appearance and what happens.
I'm Shieva Ghofrany. I'm an OBGYN in Stanford for the last 25 years. Anel is my trainer. And I'm telling you about the weakness with which I came to him, because I had pretty much, I mean, I think you kind of told me that I was maybe the weakest person you had ever seen. It wasn't shitty the way he said it. It was the truth. And it was because I went through surgical menopause when I was 46, which was 8 years ago, when I had ovarian cancer, and despite being a gynecologist, I didn't know enough at the time to be really aggressive about treating myself. The one thing I wish you guys would all know, which we touched upon when I talked to some people before, is perimenopause is this very nebulous time. So a few women said, I don't even know if I'm in it. And I was like, let me just say this. If you're in your late 30s to early 40s and you're in this room, my suspicion is you have either hot flashes, night sweats, mood changes, breast tenderness, ovulation pain, you want to kill your family, maybe a little period changes, maybe a lower libido, maybe a little more weight around the middle, maybe a little less hair on your head, more hair on your chin. Any of those, in addition to other things, would make me say to you, it's likely perimenopause, and it's normal, and it's natural, and we can still also not fight against it, but treat it. So that's the part I want you to know. It's natural, it's common, it's going to happen if we're lucky enough to live long enough, and we can treat it, but it's not something pathological. So I want you guys all at once to learn all the things about it so that you can deal with it, but also not pathologize it, right? We don't want to over-medicalize it, we don't want to pathologize it, but we don't want to blow off the symptoms, because they can make you feel lousy, and they also can lead to things like complete loss of muscle mass, which we're working on.
Hi, I'm Sarah Swanberg. I am a doctor of acupuncture, Chinese medicine, and the owner of Indigo Wellness Group, and we are neighbors with Countdown here in Westport. We also have an office in Stanford, and we have acupuncture, nutrition, pelvic floor PT, therapy, massage therapy, mental health, facials, everything. Really, it's a one-stop shop for wellness, and I love talking about perimenopause. I've really, in the last year or two, started to feel the changes myself, and I think you took the words out of my mouth. Like, we talk about it, or I remember hearing about it in my mom's generation, something like, she was broken. You know, I remember my siblings and I being like, why are the windows open? It's January. And that was it. And that's like all I knew about it. But I've really been thinking a lot as my daughter goes through puberty, and the things that I'm saying to her, like, this is a lot for your body, but we have the tools and resources to, like, and the education to help you kind of ride these waves through this, and you're not broken, there's nothing wrong with you. And then I realized I should be saying that to myself too, and to the women that I see. So we treat a lot of women going through this, and I think there's so much we can do sort of foundationally in lifestyle and through acupuncture to help. And then when people need bigger guns, we send them to, you know, our friends that can talk about hormones. We send them to our strength trainers because we know that's so important. So yeah, I'm feeling this stuff myself, and I think a lot of women just don't really understand because we were never educated, and so I'm hoping we can kind of pass that along to our next generation too.
Hi everyone, I'm Sarah Becker. I'm the dietitian at Indigo, and no personal experience yet as I am expecting a baby girl, but I absolutely love what she was said, like hopefully we're all lucky enough to experience this, and I want to take that with me as I go into my late 30s and 40s. As a dietitian, I really nerd out about gut health, and what I want you guys to know is that diet, lifestyle, and the state of our gut can really impact the transition from perimenopause to menopause, and the healthier the gut, the easier that transition will be. And it's pretty cool because there are certain ways that we can measure estrogen in the body, how we are using that hormone, and then how we're losing the hormone. We want to actually take the hormones to the toilet. We want to poop them out. So knowing the state of the gut and how those systems are working can really set us all up for success.
Great, thank you guys. So I'm going to start with the first question for Shieva. Hormone therapy is a hot topic in perimenopause. I'm sure we've all heard about it lately, especially on social media. Can you discuss how you assess the risks and benefit of hormone therapy for individual patients and what newer treatments are available?
Yes, that's a big question.
You can just take parts of it.
I will take part of it. But first, I'm going to laugh at what Sarah said about, like, I'm not in perimenopause because I'm pregnant, because I was joked that my third baby, I was 41 almost when I birthed her. Well, I didn't birth her. She was removed from my body. And I remember being at the hospital, and I was like, she's so pretty. And I was like, oh God, I can't see her. Because I now need readers, which really was one of my first times that I was all at once immediately postpartum and perimenopausal, because our vision also will change. And so it was a I don't even want to say rude awakening. It was a good teaching point to me as the doctor that these things can coexist, and we're going to see a huge, like you and I have already seen them, a huge crossover between a lot of women who are still birthing, because even during perimenopause you will still ovulate. It might not be as regular, or it might be regular, so you can still get pregnant whether or not you want to, so you have to pay attention to that. And so it's an interesting change and flux that we didn't see when our mothers were growing up, because they were pretty much done having their babies, mostly in their 40s. So, okay, hormone replacement. You might have heard that we used to call it hormone replacement with the idea of thinking that we were replacing it. Now it's called menopausal hormone treatment. So if you see MHT instead of HRT, that is why. It's a little bit of a controversy in our world as to whether or not that word matters, but you'll hear people say it. So I kind of interchange HRT, MHT. And it means replacing estrogen and progesterone, but we're also starting to talk about testosterone. Because well, you might not know this, women actually have more testosterone in their body than they have estrogen. Did anyone know that? I know, it's bizarre. Because we've mislabeled hormones as estrogen and progesterone are female hormones and testosterone is a male hormone, and that's actually completely untrue. Men have some estrogen, he has a lot, we can see, and women have testosterone, and we need it. And so we're actually starting to replace all of them, but again, there are many controversies. The biggest controversy lies in the fact that back in 2002, there was this huge study. And again, if you guys are on social media at all, you'll see that it's making a splash because we talk about the WHI study, which came out when I was a resident, and it basically said, hormones are bad, they will increase the risk of heart attack, stroke, and breast cancer. The data was unfortunately not flawed, but the data was misinterpreted, and the news media really took hold of it, and scared essentially 2.5 generations of women out of hormones. They've now done the modeling. Hundreds of thousands of women have actually really suffered, like either death or increased rates of breast cancer, believe it or not, because estrogen alone decreases your risk of breast cancer, doesn't increase it. Heart attack, stroke, things like that, you can have some level of protection from estrogen. So it's a complicated story. We are more liberal about starting our patients on estrogen and progesterone now because we have newer formulations that are more natural. When I say natural in quotes, it's still formulated in a pharmacy, whether or not it's a compounding pharmacy or it's a regular FDA-approved pharmacy, but you'll hear the term bioidentical. And that means it's more like our body as opposed to the older synthetic hormones that we used to use. The ones that were in the original study, ironically, were in a way most natural because they were derived from pregnant horses, and that's really natural when you think about it, but maybe conferred a higher risk. So now we use more naturally derived that are still made in a lab, but are more identical to our own body, and we're using them a lot more liberally. There will still be a big controversy, and you'll see this if you follow social media, that there are some people who think we should only be offering them to you if you have symptoms like hot flashes and night sweats, and other people who believe that there is enough data that it actually really might confer protection against your brain, against your cardiovascular risk. We know for your bones, we know that it might decrease risk of colon cancer, for example. I'm in the camp of, I don't think everyone should be on them, but I don't think we should be as stringent as the purists. Like I was just at the Menopause Society meeting this weekend, and the academics are very pure about saying, if you're not having hot flashes or night sweats, we shouldn't be offering it. And so it's good to know that, because you'll hear people on both sides of the map. I could talk about it a lot more, but.
Very fascinating. Okay, this is for everyone. Hottest topic probably, especially around here, GLP-1, Ozempic. We're going to talk about this because a lot of people, I think, are interested in it. So GLP-1 receptor agonists have gained attention for their role in weight management. What are your thoughts on their potential impact, and how would you integrate or caution against them in your fields? So why don't we start with Sarah, because a follow-up is how would you combine nutrition guidance for someone on a GLP-1, and what have you seen over the last, I don't know, 3 years, whatever?
So I've been in practice for 2, so I'll speak on that.
Okay.
I have a lot of clients on GLP-1. Now I want to say, if a 5 to 10 pound weight loss is your goal, I'm not sure that's the best tool to start with. As a dietitian, I want to make sure your foundations are in check. And when I mean foundations, I mean you're building blood sugar balance meals, you're moving your body, you're weightlifting and building muscle, you're sleeping properly, you're eating enough fiber, all of these things. Because when you say you do decide to go on it, if those foundations aren't met, honestly, the GLP-1 is not going to work as efficient and might do more harm in the long run. And what I also want you guys to know is that there are so many foods that actually activate GLP-1s in the body naturally. For example, healthy fats like cooking with ghee, olive oil, eating nuts, seeds, avocados, those actually increase GLP-1 in the body by 3 times. 3 times. So if you are eating those at every meal, again, we want to build blood sugar balance meals, so we want to include protein, fiber, and healthy fats, you're already helping that natural weight loss process that your body has.
Fascinating. Do you want to just go down the line?
Yep. I love it. I'm really fascinated by GLP-1s, and I actually think people are surprised to hear that, given that I'm in kind of like natural medicine world. I feel like you were the first person that was like, oh, we gotta look at the cardiovascular benefits. And there's really interesting stuff coming out. So I'm very, like, not to be too political, but like your body, your choice. And I think everybody really needs to look at, for them, like the risk benefit of everything from hormones to GLP-1s. I really wish we could get rid of some of the shame around some of these things, and I feel like we've moved so far forward in getting rid of shame about fertility meds and antidepressants and anti-anxiety meds, and now all of a sudden we're like reverting back to like, do you know she's on Ozempic? Like, we don't need that, and I think we should be able to have much more interesting conversations about the possible risks and benefits of these drugs. I don't think it should be, you know, a first resort. I really do think like getting the foundations in place is super important for any of these meds, and we see women come in sometimes that are on it and they feel terrible. And my end goal for most people is like improved quality of life. You should feel great so that you can go do all of the other things in your life, not so that you can say like, oh, I'm, you know, eating all of these great foods. It's really to be able to propel you forward in your life. So if you're on one of those meds and you feel like garbage, it's not working. I think with every medication, you need to have a plan to get on it. You really need to understand what it's doing to your body and have a plan to get off of it, and have a support team. So we work with people all the time on all sorts of things, and I'm interested to see like where we go with it, because I do think that we've seen women who really struggle to get pregnant for a long time start one, and then boom. Wow. So I think PCOS, I think there's some places where this could be really cool.
Sure. So what I'll give you is the good, the bad, the ugly. I'll give you some examples that I've seen this already for 2.5 years with my clients that have been on it. And I'll start with the good. Gentlemen, about 60 pounds overweight, can't lose weight, on and off, constantly. This doesn't work, otherwise.
There you go.
So, I can't just. So, about 60 pounds overweight, loses 20 pounds here and there, gains it back constantly. We do blood work a bunch of times. The blood sugar level keeps getting worse and worse and worse, to the point where we're like very close to diabetes. So finally the doctor, and I was like, look into this. This actually might be good for you. This is what it's for, mostly. Gets on it, loses 40 pounds, 50 pounds now, sleeps way better, energy's better, all of the above, changed his life completely. That's the good, right? So it is a drug that is used and it helps people change their lives. The bad, had a client 2 years ago, one of the first ones, you know, I want to lose 5 to 10 pounds client, right? Gets on it, goes, I didn't know she was on it, goes to like Italy, all over Europe, comes back, she's like this thin. I'm like, nobody does that. It comes back this thin for like 3 months. Like, this is not, it doesn't happen. So I was like, what do you want? This is before it was a thing. She was like, well, I'm on this thing. She tells me about it. So I'm like, do you mind if I track you, everything, from your muscle to everything? I want to know what happens here. So, long story short, she went from 16% muscle mass to now 6. She's about 113 pounds, doesn't look healthy. She loves the way she looks, but there's been many times that she came in and she's like, I can't work out, my stomach is messed up. Like, it's just that. And there's been other cases where the drug itself has caused nausea to the point where after a year, people get off, they lose 20 pounds, they gain 30 back. So there's that. This is just speaking from what I've seen. And recently, just today, one of my clients is on it. She's about 3 months in. She's again lost significant, I would say about 20% of her strength in a matter of a couple of sessions. Today, we're doing mountain climbers, and she's like, oh my God, my knees are killing me. I'm like, oh, so this is what happens when you lose muscle that supports the joint, they start hurting. So instead of your muscles supporting your joints actually have to work harder for basic things like standing up and down, walking up and down the stairs, picking up the kids, and they're not supposed to do that, and that's when pain starts happening. So that's just from my experience in the last couple of years with this.
I laugh because I feel like I'm like the clinical correlate, which in medical school is like when you learn about, you know, here's the person who's got this. I'm like, I'm on it. So I like experienced all these things. I went through menopause. I'm on Ozempic. I love Ozempic because it has helped me with my food chatter. And I'm a girl who was born in the 70s. So in 1970, we were taught skinny is better. We were taught to diet restrict. It did not matter the quality of your food. You were just supposed to eat a very small amount and exercise for like 2 hours a day. It was very disordered, and I think our whole generation really suffered. So now, fortunately or unfortunately, we have the benefit of something like Ozempic, but I see, as to Anel's point, so many of us made the mistake of starting it without aggressively increasing our protein intake and without aggressively weight training. So I came to him having lost weight and felt better than I did during the pandemic and everything, but really suffering from now trying to get back my muscle mass. So I would not endorse it for anyone unless
it's
they
working.
Really...
We're getting muscle back. Good report.
I was going to ask that. Do you find it's equally as easy to put muscle back on people that are on it?
So I didn't know where she started and how much we've lost, so it was hard to gauge. But
yeah, I didn't have a lot.
Well, I'm just.
It
takes a little bit longer to get it back, I would say.
Yeah. I mean, I think, listen, it's like anything else. I totally agree with what Sarah said. I think everyone wants it to be a quick fix, and I think it's going to be a dangerous quick fix because you can get it anywhere. If you can't find a doctor who's going to do it, you can find it online, and that is dangerous because you're going to find people who want to just lose the 5 or 10 pounds, which, trust me, I get. I mean, I was the girl who was like, you give me a pill, I will take it. I remember Fen back in the day. You're all too young to learn about that. And so I think the danger, so I really would caution everyone, as enticing as it is, you will lose muscle mass potentially. You'll have to fight for your muscle mass. And as much as Sarah is saying, you have to have a plan to get on and off, the honest truth is the only people I think who should be on it are probably the people who need to be on it forever. Like, I think I need it forever because I've had a long history of yo-yo dieting, I did gastric bypass, all the things. I think if you really only need to lose 5 or 10 pounds or 20 pounds, you should find another way to do it. Now, in the future, they're talking about microdosing. They're going to find maybe more variants of it that might be safer or might be easier to get on and off, but I wouldn't say to do that right now. Because trust me, all my patients and friends are like, can't you just give it to us?
My goal is to get somebody when it comes to muscle loss is to try to plateau them as soon as possible, which means stop the muscle loss, right? So there's no more gaining muscle, at least where we started. It's let's just remain there as long as we can and not have a drastic dip like 16 to 6% in a year and a half, which is a huge dip. So that's kind of what my approach is. Let's just keep consistent. You have to be consistent. You cannot stop weight training, otherwise you will suffer from it.
That's actually a good.
I think the low dose, the people that I've seen that are on the very low dose and staying in that seem to be doing better than the people that kind of went to this really high dose
Extreme,
really
yeah.
quickly, lost a lot of weight really fast, and then don't feel great. So we'll see.
Can I add one more thing?
Yeah.
So Sarah and I went to a conference last February in New York. It was called the International Health Symposium, and of course there was a talk on Ozempic, which we went to, and a doctor who led the talk, who prescribes it heavily, he makes all of his clients sign a contract, which I think is one of the most brilliant, smart things you can do for your clients, and it says, while on this medication, you need to stick to these 5 things. Weight train, meet your protein goals, meet your fiber goals, take certain supplements because the medication is going to naturally deplete you. And that was like an aha moment for the practice. Not that I have a contract, but I sit down with all the clients and say, like, these are the goals that we must prioritize when you're on it, so that your success meets your standards, and that you can leave here healthier than when you walked in the door.
I think this is a good follow-up for what you were just saying. Obviously, whether or not someone is on Ozempic or a GLP-1, strength training is recommended for women of a certain age in perimenopause and in menopause. Can you explain why this is important for women at our age, I should say, and what types of strength exercises are the most effective?
Okay, so I could spend a day on this. I'll get to the point quickly. Like, moderate intensity is not going to do it. There's many different types of exercise, right? There's a mental exercise, which is good for your mind. I can't do that because I get too competitive and I hurt myself. That just doesn't work for me, right? So I garden. That's my mental release, right? Then there's some exercises that actually make changes to your body. And it's not moderate intensity anymore because the hormones have changed. It takes that much harder for you to build to get stronger in this age, right? So I don't want to name any exercises, but there are exercises also in classes and things like that that are going to stress you out. It's going to put you to not the stimulus for your body to change, but make your body almost feel the opposite from that type of a workout. Strength training is extremely important. I maybe about 5 years ago, really started shifting thinking about not your summer body, but your old lady body. Like, how many years can we add to the end and not take away? Because not all exercise is created equal. Some will hurt you in the long run. People who just run, nothing against running, I ran a ton of marathons, and you don't do other types of stuff to support your joints, you are going to have joint issues. It is going to hurt. So now, yes, you feel great in the moment, it's awesome, it's super cool, you feel great, but in 20 years you need knee replacements because you didn't support your joints from all that running. So is that actually good for you in the long run? Probably not, right? So the high intensity strength training is extremely important to push that hard. Now, nutrition is going to play a huge role in this, especially when it comes to intermittent fasting. You have to be fueled to be able to push this hard, right? That's something I want to talk about with you, Sarah, especially is those extra 2-3 reps towards the end when you got nothing left. If you are depleted and you have nothing in your bone, in your muscles, you are not going to be able to push to that level of creating that stimulus for your body to change.
Can I just ask you a question?
Yeah, of course.
What defines like intense training? Is it like lifting heavy weights, or is it a combination, but it's like how hard you're extending yourself? Like what does that mean?
So I push everyone to complete muscle exhaustion.
Okay.
Right, to the point where I can take one finger and put it on the machine and you are done. That is high intensity.
Okay.
It is very hard to get there by yourself. I can't get there by myself, right? Because your mind is a self-defense mechanism. It doesn't want to go there. As soon as you feel the burn, you're like, I'm done, right? But we have to cross that line to say, that was hard, fuck that, excuse me. In case it happens again, I'm going to be ready. That's how the body responds by working that hard, right? So weights, the way I do weights is a little bit differently. We do them extremely slow. A lot of force is what causes, force is what causes lots of injuries. Force is mass times acceleration. So if you take something heavy and you accelerate really quickly, you're causing a lot of force to your joints. And with bad form, you will hurt something. So we lift weights slowly, you eliminate the force, right? No injuries. Slow is like 10 seconds one way, 10 seconds back, not like, just 2 or 3 seconds. So when you go that something also magical happens is you get to really work the muscles to a deep level to work to that high intensity to create that stimulus. So you have to be kind of smart about it as well, especially if you're going into strength training for the first time. Don't just start loading up weight, get your form right, really get to the point where you feel comfortable and strong.
Okay, let's change topics for a second. Sarah Swanberg, this one's for you. Many women turn to acupuncture for managing perimenopause symptoms like hot flashes, insomnia, mood swings. How does acupuncture help with hormonal balance, and what are your thoughts on combining it with conventional treatments?
Well, obviously I love acupuncture. So the way Chinese medicine thinks about hormones is the yin-yang, half circle that people usually know. We think about these things as being balanced in the body, and actually really relates well to estrogen and progesterone in the body and how things balance out. So if estrogen is our coolant in our body as we enter perimenopause, that starts to decline, and we see some more heat symptoms in the body that really aren't true heat the way we think of it. It's sort of more of like a false heat because the coolant is low. So first we're gonna think about the lifestyle things, and that's always a part of our conversations, and probably a lot of you notice this too, like alcohol, things that create heat in our system, inflammatory foods, just you really don't have the cushion for that in the same way you probably did when you were 20. I know I can't really even have a cocktail these days without feeling like it affects my sleep. I feel hot, I feel anxious the next day, and sometimes I still think it's worth it to do that, but often I don't, and I'm like, I don't want to feel like that tomorrow. So when somebody comes in for acupuncture, we go through a whole Chinese medicine intake and we figure out what those symptoms are. And as we were saying earlier, this estrogen decline is not just your reproductive system, it's your brain health, it's your skin, it's your bones, it's your cardiovascular system. So everybody in this room might experience different symptoms from the same root cause. So we're gonna try to figure out what those symptoms are, and we're gonna come up with a treatment plan, including acupuncture points that can help to maybe clear some of that heat and then support that yin of the body. If there's digestive issues going on and you're not pooping regularly, we know that can impact that sort of estrogen clearance. So we can get things moving with acupuncture, and maybe I'll send you to Sarah Becker also to sort of work on diet and fiber and lifestyle. But really in an acupuncture session, we're using different points and different combinations to try to figure out how to bring your body back into balance. It also can be a really stressful time, and I was saying earlier, like my daughter's going through these changes herself. I'm dealing with my parents and they're aging, and I feel like sometimes just overwhelmed in a way that I think I probably could have handled this stuff better 10 years ago. Now my body's changing too, and I'm like, oh, that short fuse can be really difficult sometimes, and there's just something so beneficial about that hour that I try to carve out for myself to really rest and feel like somebody else is taking care of me, and that I can lie there without my phone and without like the world buzzing. And I don't do it enough. I should get on the table more myself, but I can see the benefit of that for people that walk in and come in kind of just frazzled and overwhelmed and hot, and then they walk out feeling like chill and relaxed. And explaining to them those lifestyle factors too, of like really focusing on more nourishing foods. Maybe you can't drink the way you used to. Maybe that cup of coffee in the afternoon like really needs to go. And we just look at things really holistically. So I love it, and then I love combining it sometimes with other treatments. And I know like you've sent me people before who have like knee pain and hot flashes, and acupuncture can really help like reduce the severity of it. And then there have been times where I'm like, this isn't really cutting it. I think you should really think about hormones now, or we'll try supplements, or whatever really somebody's looking for. We'll find an approach that works together. So I love it. If you've never tried acupuncture, please do. Wherever you can go, it's a wonderful tool in this toolbox. And really that's the goal, is like having a really robust toolbox of tools that work for you, that you're open to trying to help really navigate this and not make it all go away, but like smooth out that kind of rockiness.
As a patient of Sarah's, I will say it is the best hour of your week if you go regularly. You walk out just feeling amazing and calm, and not angry at your family anymore?
Or
For
I would say
a few minutes.
Say there's thousands notice too. You're like, a little more chill.
Okay, so biology versus lifestyle is kind of what we're talking about right now. Let's get into belly fat. Seems to be where, I mean, personally, I'm noticing like a huge change in this general vicinity. So I want to ask Shieva now, lifestyle versus biology, how much should we go on either end? How do we combine them? And like, how do you talk to patients about that?
So, well, that's one of the many symptoms, right? I have patients coming in all the time who say, I'm not doing anything differently, I'm eating the same, I'm exercising the same, and yet I notice that my belly is getting bigger. And assuming it is not that you have bloating or pain or pressure in your pelvis, which I would always tell you to get a pelvic ultrasound for other pathologies, it really is often your hormone changes, the way your hormones fluctuate. I describe it as it almost becomes that and I hate to use gender pronouns for this, but your female hormones behave a little bit more like male hormones, hence the reason less hair on your head, more hair on your chin, more weight around your middle, right? And so, so that is a very common thing in perimenopause. One of the reasons weight training is so important is because it actually creates more insulin sensitization. We become a little bit insulin resistant. So weight training, so increasing your muscle mass can help. Hormones actually have been shown. Estrogen has been shown to improve insulin sensitization. So people that are on Ozempic and hormones do better than Ozempic alone or than actually estrogen alone. But the hormones really can be helpful. The fact is you can't escape eating better, right? What we do for hot flashes, I do tell patients, you really have to, well, when I say to patients, here are the things that will improve your hot flashes. Less alcohol, less sugar, less bread, rice, pasta, and less caffeine. And they're like, you're telling me I have to give up these things. And I say, I'm not telling you you have to give it up. But to Sarah's point, if I have a margarita, I am a schwitzy mess. I sometimes choose that because that night I don't care. But the nights where I do care, I'll have vodka soda. So I'm not asking you to give it up altogether. But the truth is, you'll notice that alcohol, caffeine, and again, in general, for many of us, sugar, like any foods that high in sugar is going to do it. So you can't escape that part of the biology. So you have to make some of these changes if you want to feel better and to take hormones. We haven't even talked about birth control pill versus hormones, which we have to.
I just want to get Becker and Anel's take on this too, just because of what you guys do. I think ties in nicely with what you just said.
So the point about alcohol that I'll add is that alcohol actually pauses fat burning. And the liver detoxifies alcohol as well as our hormones, and it's going to choose alcohol to detox first every time. So it's just going to add fuel to the fire. Unfortunately, like Shieva said, she'll choose vodka. Vodka is actually the best choice. Red wine is the worst. So be choosy. Like, I'm not going to tell you never. Clears are better. Yeah, we're
Still better than wine. I mean, wine is
Even then, I had a tequila drink last night and it was sugar. No, it didn't. Tequila soda. It just, I can't do it anymore.
And then also, again, I'm not at this life stage yet, but the excess fat is just part of this phase, and it will actually get better once you move through it, and weight loss will become easier also when you've passed it. So a little bit of body love goes a long way in this period. I know that's a lot easier said than done, but know that there is a end in sight.
Sarah and I were just talking about somebody today who last week, she's been struggling with these changes and she looks great, but she's like, this is just not my body, and she's really struggling. And then this week she came in and she's like, you know what, I think I decided I'm gonna love this body. And I was like, yes, it's amazing to feel that way. And there is actually some really interesting thoughts about like why our bodies do this, and some of it's give you a little more padding when our bones get weaker. And I think if we think of like the beauty and the wisdom in our bodies, sometimes we want to change everything and we want to be perfect, but you don't want to be a frail old lady. You really don't, because if you're underweight and you fall, you're in trouble. So I think sometimes, like, as much as we would love to look like we looked when we were 20, maybe part of the work that we all need to do is saying like, all right, I could use a little bit more, cushion, or maybe I don't have to hate this so much if I can understand one of the reasons that it's happening.
Yeah. You want to speak to this before we move on?
Yes. So I hate to break it to you, but there's no amount of crunches or core work that's gonna get rid of that belly, right? Everyone has a six-pack, all of you. You just can't see it, right? It's there, right? So it is like, even when it comes to cardio and exercise, you're not going to burn it off. There's 3,500 calories in 1 pound of fat. So get on that bike, spend an hour at a medium intensity for 500 calories, right? 7 days a week, 1 pound of fat. If you overeat by one peanut butter jelly sandwich that your kid left out, you're back to 0.
But to be clear, you're not saying to do that. You're saying
No,
don't do that.
don't do that.
that.
I'm just saying. It's possible, but you're gonna waste a lot of time, right? So you have to train smarter. It's easier to control the intake of what's coming in than it is the output that you're giving out. I don't know who has 7 hours to put into the gym, right? Or whatever it is. The other thing on alcohol too, once alcohol enters your system, it's not a protein, it's not a carb, it's not a fat. So your body says, hold up, there's a foreigner here, we need to really stop all this other digesting so we can put that on the side, hang on, let me break this down first into a carb or whatever, most likely a carb. Do you know how long it takes on average to break down one drink? On average, 4 to 6 hours. So in the whole time that whatever you're doing, your body is struggling, digesting, putting things away, storing things, whatever it is. So just drink, basically. No, I'm just
Wait, I have a follow-up on that.
Yeah.
Okay, so this isn't in our notes, but THC versus alcohol, does that have the same kind of effect? If it's like I feel like a lot of people, I feel like I go to a lot of events and I drink a lot of like the dose drinks and like don't feel sick the next day and sleep fine and don't have night sweats. So
I was gonna ask, how do you feel the next day? I don't
Great.
read on those drinks,
really?
but you do.
Yeah.
And I think that's great. I think people are finding that to be very helpful.
Like, oh, I'm laughing because one of my best friends did. And I was just like, this is amazing. I don't want to go over it, but like all I want to do is go to the diner and eat mac and cheese. I don't know, is that better?
Candy.
I mean, I think the honest answer is we don't have enough data about this, right? They're starting to do work with like CBD and hot flashes and things like that. So I think there will be a lot more work, and you probably know more about it than I do. I think that I think it's probably healthier than alcohol, but I think the truth is many people are having alcohol and THC, and they're doing both.
Yeah, I actually would have to look into that. But at the end of the day, the liver is still processing it. So if alcohol is taking priority over everything else, I'm assuming it might fall into that same category, but don't quote me on that. I would need to look it up.
Okay, so outside of THC, there's a lot of great mocktail options out there. I love seeing those. The sound drinks that we have here tonight, that's a local brand who donated them, so try them. But put it in a wine glass with some ice cubes. I find that like really hits the spot sometimes and just feels like a fun alternative, and it's fun to order out. I think we always order mocktails out, and it's fun to like try different things. So yeah, look for alternatives. We always say like you don't want to just remove something that's fun. You want to replace it first. Like find things that you enjoy. We're not trying to take enjoyment away from people. We're trying to just make sure that you feel human the next day.
So I was looking through the questions we already had, and we've covered, I think, most every topic that we had in here. Does anyone want to talk about, before I open it up, like any more big points?
Yeah,
like
the
the birth
birth
control
control
thing?
Yeah, and actually, I love what Sarah said about it does get better. So this is the truth. Perimenopause is actually the worst time, because perimenopause, the hallmark is that your hormones are really predictably unpredictable. So instead of a nice sine wave where you're ovulating and getting your period, you might still be getting your period regularly, but your quality of ovulation will be different, and it changes potentially each month. You might not be getting your period regularly. Someone had just said to me, well, I might feel great for 3 months in a row, and then I feel terrible, and that's not surprising. So the hard part is recognizing and believing me when I say, you might feel crappy certain days, great certain days, crappy certain weeks, great certain weeks, month to month, year to year. The good news is once you become postmenopausal, which is a year with no period, which for most women is at 51, you actually feel better. Meaning there are still things we have to address. You still might have hot flashes, night sweats, bone issues, all those things, and you still might need hormones, but that fluctuation that makes you feel really crazy and ragey, that happens again in your 40s often, is going to be gone. So don't worry, it does get a lot better.
We're saying a decade of raging.
No, it's the truth. Get ready. She's just saying. This is the truth, that it is potentially a decade. And I think that, again, since I'm 54 and people weren't talking about it and I was in it, I was like, why are we talking about this other one? Because I feel like I'm ragey and I have a toddler and my parents were older and I think it is good that we're finally talking about it because you don't have to just be ragey. First of all, knowing it already feels better. Knowing it, naming it, knowing that all your friends are going to go through it, or you can teach them about it because they don't really recognize it. Making it clear that there are ways to help it. Acupuncture, CBT, not CBD, but CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, hormones, certainly different vitamins. Like if there's one vitamin I would tell you all to take, it would be what? I was talking about it. Vitamin D. Magnesium is the second. Vitamin D. We should all be taking vitamin D for
Can you
your
say
bone
amounts
mass.
just to be very specific?
I cannot say amounts exactly. I would personally say I would like your level, ask your doctor if I'm not your doctor, but I would like your level to be between 50 to 70, which is the normal range, but on a higher end of normal. And that really seems to help with hot flashes, mood changes. It helps your bones. So you can ask your doctors to check that. But this is the other little controversy. Birth control pills versus hormone replacement. The reason why traditionally we will say to you, go on a birth control pill if you are still getting your period and you're perimenopausal, is because if your hormones are, again, predictably unpredictable, and I try to fix them with hormone replacement doses, which are much lower doses, it's just harder. It can work, and I do have patients where we can work with them, but you have to kind of be really ready to understand that every couple months you might have to change and play with the doses, and most of us just don't have the time, right? Forget the privilege, we all have the privilege to be in this room and probably have doctors that we can see, but we don't have the time privilege to do that. So it's just easier to give you supra-physiologic doses, which is what the birth control pill is, and that controls everything. The upside being it's even, it makes everything steady. The downside being it's completely synthetic hormones, it's not bioidentical. It stops you from ovulating, which can be great because it stops your period, it stops you from getting moody, breast tenderness, pregnancy, all those things, but it also can really tank your libido. It can make your vulva and your vagina even more, I hate the word dry, but dry or less elastic. It can kind of affect some of the micronutrients and things like that. So like anything, there's a pro and a con. And I say this because again, on social media, you're gonna hear these factions. The people who are very pro, like just put everyone on the birth control pill if they're perimenopausal, and then the other doctors who are saying that's ridiculous, they can all take hormone replacement. I think that's coming from a place of privilege to say everyone can take hormone replacement instead, because you might not have doctors who are willing to do it, they're not trained in it, and again, you might not have the time to kind of, just experiment and see how you feel. Like we all have lives that we have to take care of. So there should not be any shame in either. They both can work, but a little bit differently.
Anyone else have any hot topics before we open it up?
I know Anel touched on intermittent fasting, but do you want to still talk about it?
Yeah, I want to know about it.
Okay.
You wanna go?
Sure. Can it be beneficial? Yes, but what we see a lot of time in this demographic age group is that people think it means cut and restrict calories. That is not what we're saying at all. Intermittent fasting is getting the same amount of calories, but just in a condensed window. So for weight loss, I like a 10-hour eating period, and that's definitely customized based on our hunger cues and our blood sugar, etc. But let's say, what does that look like? So that's breakfast at 9 a.m. and the kitchen's closed at 7 p.m. Early dinners is a really great secret weapon to weight loss. So this means we're not skipping breakfast. We're not missing meals. We're not having coffee as a meal. We're still getting the same amount of calories and nutrients, but just in a smaller window.
Can you explain why though? Like why does that make a difference?
So a few things. For example, like an earlier dinner, you're giving your body, ideally you want to eat 3 hours before we go to bed. You're giving your digestive system enough time to process food and extract those nutrients, get all those nutrients into the cells. Your cells need energy to actually lose weight. And so just giving our system a break, because when we go to bed with a full stomach, none of your other systems are working. Your body is focusing solely on breaking down that food. There's other reasons that I'm
Your
doing.
insulin levels don't get triggered as much.
Yep. So yeah, back to the blood sugar balance piece. You're giving your body time to process the glucose, the insulin, to recalibrate, and that because if you're always grazing or snacking, those systems are always on, and you're never giving your system a break.
I think you also want to fuel for the busiest part of your day too. And so most people, the morning is the most active, and maybe you're working out, you need fuel for that. Maybe you're just getting up and getting the kids somewhere and getting to work, you need fuel for that. And then maybe at night, you're sitting on the couch watching Perfect Couple, or what's the new show? Something like that. You don't need quite as much fuel at that time of day. So you're really shifting for your individual lifestyle. And if you're a night shift worker, that would work differently. You know, basing things on individual lifestyle is really important there too. Nobody wants you to be hangry. I think that's the thing, like when people were starting with intermittent fasting, they're like, I want to kill everybody at work. It's like, yeah, because your body's like sending out these alarm signals, so you need to eat for that and then shift that window a little bit differently and really experimenting, because the goal is to feel good. Not that sometimes making these changes can be a little like rough as you transition in, but if you're consistently doing the same thing just because somebody told you that's the cool new wellness thing to do, but you feel not good, listen to your bodies. I think we've all kind of missed that at some point, of like really thinking about how do I feel when I do this thing.
Okay, so remember earlier how I said we have to work to a high intensity to support the bones, to get the muscles strong. You cannot do that on intermittent fasting. Come to me with no food, you're not making it, right? I'm gonna have you sit down 20 minutes in and we're gonna be ending the session, right? You need the fuel to push hard to create that stimulus for your body to change. If you don't have the fuel, you're not getting there. For us men, it works wonders. Like I can intermittent fast in a week, I'm a different person, right? It's annoying, she hates it every time, but
I get hangry too. I've heard stories.
yeah, I get hangry, that's true. 100%. So I am more a big proponent of nighttime fasting. So like Sarah said, have the fuel, get in about your day, work hard, bring your protein intake, whatever you need to do, and then end a little earlier at night. Let your body digest everything, all of that. Skip dinner if you can, but make sure that you have enough fuel in that day that if you trying to go to bed hungry, abort mission. It's not gonna happen. You're gonna sleepwalk to your fridge and eat everything, right? So you have to have all the fuel for the day in that breakfast to 4 or 5 p.m. whenever you end to be able to go into the night fully digested. So that's my advice, at least in this age between what I've seen, 39, 38, and to 45 or so.
And you call out an important point. It works well for men. It's not
Right.
for every woman.
Correct.
Especially, it's best studied in the menopause ages, but before that, the data might not line up. Again, we're all about experimenting. See what works for you. If you have cues that are like, I'm hangry, I'm irritable, all those things, probably not the best idea. And there's so many other tools. We've talked about tools in our toolbox, this whole chat, that can reach and help reach the same goals for yourself.
So if you're strength training first thing in the morning, like before the kids are up, like what is enough fuel to be able to give you the energy that's going to give a productive strength session?
So if it's first thing in the morning, you actually want to get the carbs in first to give you the energy to get through your workout, whether it's a banana or you don't want to have like 2 eggs, you know, like it's just going to sit there, you're going to feel sluggish, your body's working to digest it. It's not going to work out. So a banana or some carby energy to get you through it, and then you feel, I wouldn't even do a protein bar.
Dates are really good.
Dates are
Like
good.
dates.
Yeah, that's perfect.
What about protein shakes?
Again, protein is just going to sit there. It takes a little bit longer to digest and you're going to feel sluggish. Afterwards, 100%. As a matter of fact, within an hour for women, I would suggest. Men can probably go a little bit longer once you create that stimulus for your muscles to respond. You guys, within 30 minutes to an hour, should be having some kind of protein to start the rebuilding of the muscles. When you work out, you're not seeing results there. That's just you breaking down your body. It's the fuel afterwards that you eat, that's where the recovery really happens.
With the level of intensity that Anel is speaking of, we're saying carbohydrates like a date or a banana, because that is going to break down into sugar, which equals energy, and fuel you through your workout, so you're not ending up on the floor in 20 minutes.
Right, and a banana is going to have fiber. So a Snicker bar and a banana essentially have the same amount of sugar, but what a banana has is fiber, which is not going to give you that huge spike and a huge crash. It's actually going to be a little more tapered increase.
And now, do you recommend that before cardio as well, or just before strength training?
Any kind of
Any first thing in the morning? Okay.
Yeah. If it's like first thing in the morning, right out of bed, let's work out, definitely something carby first, protein right after, and then go about your day.
there a test to see like if you're actually in perimenopause or menopause? Because I feel like all the signs are like, everybody, like, you know, they're so elusive, you know what I mean? It's just like, we all have these signs, and how do you know if it's perimenopause, menopausal, or just aging, right, or stress? Like,
Yeah.
so I'm wondering, is there like a test?
I'm talking about this.
Yes.
Okay, and this will depend a little bit on who you ask. I would personally say this. If you are late 30s, early 40s, and you're having any or all of those symptoms, and you don't have to have all of them, you could just have some of them, I would personally say you are probably perimenopausal, assuming your thyroid is normal, and you should all have a regular medical, like an internist or a primary care, and so they should be checking your thyroid every year, assuming that you're not iron deficient, which doesn't always get checked. You'll get checked for anemia, but not iron deficiency. So those are two easy things, and assuming you're not vitamin D3 deficient. So those three things I would personally always check. Some people also check cortisol. It's a little more finicky and harder to check. So assuming you've ruled out those medical issues, and anything obviously medical, like an autoimmune disorder or anything, then I would personally say you're probably in perimenopause. But, and I would not check your hormones. I would say to a patient, if I check your hormones, the problem is this. I can check, and today they might look normal, like you're not perimenopausal, like it'll literally say premenopausal. And you'll think, oh, then there's something tragically wrong with me. Or you won't recognize what I've said, which is that it's fluctuating all the time. Or the opposite will happen. It'll come back in the postmenopausal range, and you'll think, oh my God, there's something wrong. I'm going through postmenopausal at age 42, for example, and that's not the case. You're still just perimenopausal. So we don't have good blood tests for it because the hormones that we would check, which is FSH and estradiol, fluctuate day to day, week to week, month to month in a very disordered way during perimenopause. The mistake is, many of you will go to your doctor and you'll ask them to check. And because your doctors don't have time, it's not their fault, but they don't have time, they will just check it off the box and they'll send you for the blood test. And then what happens is the nurse will call you and either say, hey, your blood work is normal, in which case now you think you're crazy. Or they'll say, oh, it turns out it looks like you're in menopause, which is also poor vernacular, because what does that mean to you? If I say in menopause, what does that mean to you? You don't know what that means, because it's not really the term. The term is, we should either be saying perimenopausal or postmenopausal. Postmenopausal is 1 year with no period, that day is considered menopause. That one day when you've had a year with no period is menopause, and then everything after that is postmenopausal, right? Does that make sense? And I want you to get that, because here's the problem. Even doctors will mess this up all the time. My friends and I at the Menopause Society meeting were like geeks at the table at dinner, because I was like, you guys, we're messing this up all the time for our patients. We're not being clear. So I try to be very clear when I say postmenopausal or perimenopausal, right? But so checking your blood work right now, maybe in the future we'll be able to do it. I don't want to say anything against things like the Dutch test because I don't know how some people feel about it. There are things called the Dutch test, for example. They're urine salivary tests that you can do that measure all your fluctuating hormones. I would personally say I can glean what your hormones are doing by your story, and it's not going to be that much more accurate if you prove it. Now, some people want to prove it. If you're dying to know, spend the money and do it. But it's only going to tell you that snapshot in time anyway. It's not telling you, it's not like your thyroid, which isn't fluctuating day to day or week to week for the most part. So that's really important to know because there is a lot of misconception, and unfortunately doctors feed into that misconception. Again, not their fault, they don't have time. But I would urge you not to ask your doctor to check your hormones other than, again, your thyroid and your vitamin D3 and check for iron deficiency.
Follow up on that is, you said having the symptoms. We've talked about hot flashes, night sweats, belly fat, irritability. Are there anything else? Is there anything else we need to look at? I mean, what are
there's
they?
a ton. I mean, there's literally 57 symptoms they do. I mean, head to toe. Your hair can thin, your vision can change, you can get more acne, more hair. No, I mean, truthfully, I think it's 57. I could be wrong by, like, it could be more.
I'm gonna Google that.
Breast tenderness, I mean, so there's a ton. But I mean, I mentioned the most common ones, because if I say that, I try to, like, when I was seeing gynecology patients in my office, I would say, like, when they were getting closer to 40, like, here's what might happen, you might have da-da-da-da, and they'd all look at me like, and I would say, I know, it's the other P word, right? Like, no one wants to talk about the P word. But if I say it's perimenopause, and then you know that you're getting into it, then it shouldn't be as, like, dirty a word. It doesn't mean you're getting old. It's just a natural part. I think there's a question behind you first, and then, yeah.
Shieva, hi. I just had a question, because, you know, there's a lot of noise, I guess, or just good conversation online about perimenopause and so much attention is coming towards it. And I wonder, like, is there a catch-all that it's becoming in a way? Because it could be depression, it could be ADD, you know, like all of these things that we are like experiencing in our 40s where we're so stressed out with little children.
Well, that's a great question, first of all. Sasha owns Adomani pajamas and nightwear. If you don't know it, you need to get them. They are amazing, like magical nightwear. I would just normally wear a t-shirt and look like crap, but now I have like a beautiful. And it works away moisture so you don't get a hot. Legit. I think it's a great question, and I think what's interesting is, I think our frustration is people who believe that when you are in your 40s, you're going to have hormone changes that are going to make you feel maybe depressed, maybe have more ADHD. Like all these things are shown to be exacerbated by perimenopause. So what we see often is doctors putting patients, I'm going to put you on an antidepressant, I'm going to put you on a diet medication, I'm going to put you on, you know, all these different things, hypertension medication, all these things, when in fact, if we addressed that it was perimenopause and maybe helped people with their hormones, and maybe even just help them understand that this is a normal part of life, you can fight against it, you can also work with it, you will get through it, then it wouldn't be so bad. So I think obviously we have to differentiate. Some people are perimenopausal and still need SSRIs for their depression. Some women still need a stimulant for their ADHD. But what they're showing is actually depression during perimenopause will do better if you're also on hormones. And so you might not need to be on an antidepressant. And this isn't to malign antidepressants. I have a lot of patients who are on those, by the way, for the hot flashes, because that can actually help with hot flashes too. So I think we need to be sophisticated, and to your point, not kind of be like, oh, it's just perimenopause and blow things off. But I don't think we should pathologize all the other things as well. We can, as a joke, we can say it is perimenopause, and sorry, fuck you, not today perimenopause. I'm not accepting what you're giving me, and I'm going to fix it. Right?
But I think it's important to advocate for yourself too, and if you feel like maybe there is something else going on, make sure you're working with somebody that will check that. I had a woman recently who had what looked on paper like perimenopause, like really sort of severe hot flashes, anxiety, all like stopped getting her period, and she was told menopause. Turned out she had Lyme disease. And the symptoms just kept getting worse, and she had neurological symptoms, so she pushed for that, and she's doing really great now. I think the testing, you're right, like, we would agree with you, like, the symptoms, if you're coming in and you have these things, there's a lot we can do, and you don't have to spend money on a test, or deal with that uncertainty, or the feedback of, like, you, yes, or no, you're crazy, or yes, things. I mean, I did one of those, like, kits a couple of years ago. They sound like a fertility company, and I got my AMH and FSH tested, and it came back, and it was like, you're in perimenopause. I wasn't planning on having any more kids. I didn't expect to, like, have any feelings about this test, and I had feelings about it when I, like, opened that up. So, like, I think sometimes we have to think about that and what is the benefit of that. But yeah, you can have these symptoms. You've seen it after long COVID where you're having sweat. Like there can be other things going on. So just advocate for yourself too. But sometimes it is trying some of these lifestyle things, or maybe trying the pill and see if that helps. Again, like quality of life is sort of what we're going for. I remember your pajamas too. They're good.
Wait, and I would say two more medical things that are important. When it comes to bleeding, this is a really important point. Irregular bleeding absolutely can be part of perimenopause for sure, and actually there are doctors who would say if you're having regular bleeding, you are not perimenopausal. I don't agree with that. I think you can have many other changes. But that aside, if you're having heavy bleeding or more frequent bleeding than usual, do not assume it's perimenopause, meaning it probably is, but get your thyroid checked, get a pelvic ultrasound, rule out any pathology. At the same time, if you're missing your period and you're under 45, then you should also get your thyroid checked and then maybe do get your hormones checked, because you want to make sure you're not in early menopause, which is defined as less than 45. So I know that's confusing because you could be perimenopausal, miss some periods, and I'm saying the hormones aren't really going to help define perimenopause, but if you stopped your period altogether, then you really want to get checked out. Because those patients who are in early menopause really should be treated with hormones, because you don't want to suffer the loss of, again, bones, brain health, all the things that we know younger women absolutely need.
Hair shedding, I'm sorry. I say hair shedding. You mentioned hair shedding.
It's a big part of it.
Anything related to, I've been taking Nutrafol for a year, and I swear to God, this stuff's not helping.
It's not helping.
I don't
It's
think
not
it's
helping.
helping.
No, it's not. Because it's not really nutritional, it's very hormonal. And so actually, there's a couple of great dermatologists that I think are very good. They're using a lot of minoxidil, topical minoxidil. Minoxidil is Rogaine.
Yeah.
I'm gonna barter and write a prescription for minoxidil for free sessions. So, and actually, one of the lectures this weekend talked a lot about, there's a wonderful dermatologist who talked a lot about minoxidil, and that actually topical minoxidil is as effective as oral minoxidil, but most people will not apply it twice a day regularly,
Okay.
and so he found that the oral is just more effective with very few side effects. And there are more and more dermatologists who will prescribe that. Also something called spironolactone that many of you might have heard of. Your teenagers might be on it. It can help with acne and with hair loss because this tends to be androgenic. Androgen is the term we use for the hormones that are more male hormone. Again, not appropriate to say male, but it just makes it easier. And so the androgenic side effects of becoming perimenopausal and postmenopausal, that's what'll happen.
Okay.
Yeah.
You were next back there.
Hi, question about libido and lack thereof, and I don't know what my question is, but I would like to
Yes.
have libido.
Staying out of this.
Sorry.
Libido is also, listen, here's what's really fascinating. So while on one hand I would say libido and waning libido can be part of perimenopause, what's most interesting in all the research I've done is that what affects women's libido the most, and when we say libido, what we probably mean is spontaneous desire. Do you know that term? So there's spontaneous desire, receptive desire. Like, I want to walk around like I did in my 20s when I spontaneously wanted to have sex. Like men have because they have higher testosterone. And most of us lose our spontaneous desire, not because of like, oh, I always just joke with my husband, like, it's not you, it's me. I feel fat and I'm tired and I have kids and work. And then I did all this research and all this, as it turns out, it's him because when you're in a relationship, when you're a woman in a relationship with a man or a woman for more than 3 to 5 years, your frontal lobe changes and your spontaneous desire for that partner changes. So that's a problem, right? So what that means, I know. So that's the first thing. And actually, all joking aside, it's good to know it because it doesn't mean you're broken, your partnership, your relationship's not broken. But this is why I started to think like I saw my patients who were divorced, or like my sister was recently divorced, and they were my age or older, and I'm like, they're not losing their spontaneous desire. So it's clearly not, again, menopause and all those things. So know that spontaneous desire will wane, but all is not lost. First is, and this is what a lot of the doctors will say, your biggest sex organ is your brain. So for women, you need to do all the things. You need to maybe read erotica. You have to get yourself more in the mood. You have to see your husband from across the room and be like, oh, that's someone new and different. And really, I know it's not easy. I know. It's terrible, but it's the truth. Like that is the other terrible thing.
That prescription.
Yeah. So the other part that is terrible, and I don't know how to fix this, but maybe write to your lawmakers. There are something like 28 medications for male libido, right? And there are, do you know how many FDA approved for women? There are 2. 2 medications.
Wow.
One of which makes you nauseated if you have it with alcohol, which isn't really true. They overblow it, blew it on the FDA. So there are 2 medications that are moderate effect. And then there's testosterone, which again, moderate effect. So you can try these things, and they're relatively harmless, and I think we're gonna get more and more data about them. But it's a common thing. You are not broken. It's actually a great book from a urologist that we know well called You Are Not Broken. And it really does address all this stuff. But I think even just knowing that if I remember a patient coming in years ago and she was like, I was at dinner with all my friends and they're all having sex 5 times a week with their husbands. I joked, I was in the middle of her pap smear and I look up and I said, honey, you were in a room with unicorns or liars. They were married to this man for more than 5 years. They were not having sex 5 days a week. Now, I do have some patients who are, but when I look at them, what they're really doing, they are managing their mindset. They know it's important, they want to have sex, they recognize it's good for longevity, it's good for them, it's good for their partner, it's good for their marriage, so they're doing all the things. They're reminding themselves they should do it, they're thinking about it, they're getting themselves excited, they're probably using vaginal estrogen cream, which is really good because it helps things stay more elastic. So they really are using their brain to do it. And we're kind of pretending and thinking that they're just walking around with spontaneous desire, but they're not.
And does hormone imbalance play into that at all in terms of lack of libido, or is it just literally the reasons you said?
Well, no, and in addition, listen, imagine if your hormones are out, I hate even the word hormone imbalance, but it is the term, except that when people try to claim they can balance your hormones, which is hard to do. If you're having hot flashes and night sweats and then you're not sleeping, you're gonna be less in the mood, right? because you're then gonna be more insulin resistant, your cortisol's gonna go up, that's gonna tank your libido as well. So they're all interactive. And again, your hormones do wax and wane, and your testosterone doesn't even behave the way it should. Your testosterone starts to go down when you're like in your 20s and 30s. It just slowly starts to go down for women. But again, all is not lost, it's just that it's work. Like, it's always more work for us than it is for them.
So if you get a headache, you take an Advil and it works. If you have a hot flash one night, is there something you can take to alleviate the hot flash that night? Or is it, you just have to, if you're taking the hormone drugs, you just have to?
Well, I'll tell you medical things, and these guys can tell you non-medical, because there's a lot of non-medical. So medical, you could do hormones, and believe it or not, you don't have to do hormones every night. You could just take estrogen like every other night, for example. But the problem is then you'll have a regular bleeding and other things. So usually if you're taking estrogen, you're gonna take it all the time. And you can't predict when the hot flash is gonna happen. And if you haven't had them, they suck. They're like, I joke, they're like anxiety running through your veins sometimes. But your vitamin D3 level can also affect your hot flashes. Like, there's integrative data about that I really believe, because I've seen it with me and my patients. There are medications that have no hormones. Veoza is a new medication that works only on hot flashes. It became very popular because during the Super Bowl last year, they had big ads for it. There's an over-the-counter medication with a company that I work for called Thermella, and it's actually green tea extract, but it doesn't stimulate you, it actually helps your hot flashes. So there are things you can do, but I think you're asking, like, if I'm having a hot flash right now, can I take something right now? There aren't medications that you can do that'll work exactly that way, because they won't work that quickly. But there are devices, like there's a device you can wear on your wrist that actually cools you down or heats you up if you need. So there's things like acupuncture and CBT.
Yeah, I think we know that hot flashes that temperature regulation comes from a part of your brain, and estrogen plays a role there, and that's why they tend to happen more. So there isn't a quick fix, but there are tools that you can use. And when we have women who typically get a lot of hot flashes right before their period, or terrible PMS right before their period, we'll have them come in usually weekly for acupuncture to get started, but always target that time before things start to get a little wonky, just to try to keep things smooth, and they usually find that really helpful. But in the moment, I mean, keeping your room cool, it's not gonna necessarily stop that from happening in your body, it just might keep you a little more comfortable. You know, pajamas and pillowcases and things that aren't, and even like the plasticky microfiber stuff, I mean, it just keeps your heat in. So really thinking about like ways in your bedroom that you can be more comfortable when they happen.
I think I saw a question over here.